Okay, I think we'll make a start. We've got sort of looking like fairly steady numbers now. So welcome everybody. My name's Rachel Holden. I'm the Group Manager for the Business Support and Innovation team at Devon, Plymouth, Somerset and Torbay Trading Standards Service. Welcome to this webinar. We're here today to talk to you about the legislation changes coming in on the 1st of October, which is known as Natashas Law. And that's relevant for those of you that sell and offer pre-packed food for direct sale. This presentation is a collaboration between Trading Standards Southwest and the Better Business for All group and is hosted by Devon and Plymouth Chambers. And we'd also like to extend our thanks to the Heart of the Southwest Growth Hub. We've got some really excellent presenters today. We've got Gavin Hill from Cornwall Trading Standards and Andrew Wilson from Bristol City Trading Standards, who you'll be hearing from shortly. For those of you familiar with Zoom, you'll know that there is the opportunity to put your camera on if you wish, or you can turn it off if you prefer. We are recording the meeting, so just please be aware of that. If you're not comfortable to have your face on the recording, please do turn your camera off. I would please ask that you put yourself on mute while our presenters are talking. There will be the opportunity to ask questions. We'll be opening the floor to question and answers at the end. But if you have a question as we're going along, you'll find there's a chat function. So at the bottom of your screen or somewhere on your mobile phone, you'll find there's a sort of speech bubble, and underneath that it says chat. If you click on that, it will open up a chat screen. You can put questions in there. Dave's just put in a hello. You can either put questions to everyone, so everybody will see them, or you can choose specific recipients if you would rather. We will try and keep up with the questions in the chat as we go along, and my colleagues Roz and Dave will be answering some of them if they can in sort of real time, but there may be some questions that are going to be probably quite relevant to everybody, so we'll pick those up at the end because it would be more useful for everybody to hear the answer. So assisting us today, we've got Dave Lee from Plymouth City Council Environmental Health. We've got Philippa Norman from Dorset Trading Standards, and we've got Ros Cummings from Devon, Plymouth, Somerset and Torbay Trading Standards. So you're all in incredibly good hands. We're due to run for about an hour, so we will try to keep to time. We'll try and get as many questions in as we can at the end. But what we will do once the seminar is finished is combine the questions and the answers from this session and the previous session, and then put them together to send out to delegates with a link to the recording and some further information. So without further ado, I think you've all heard enough to introduce you to today's session. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll hand over to Andy Wilson for the first presentation. Andy, over to you.
Hi. In order to stop you looking at my horrible face, I will just start screen sharing, which takes a little while, and then with any luck I can find the presentation, and away we go. So I've been asked to talk about the background and the law that we're talking about, what the regulations say and why. My name's Andrew Wilson and I work for Bristol City Council, where I'm the technical lead for food standards, which really means information and composition of food. And in this case, I'm obviously talking about information. So we're talking about Natashas Law, as it has become known, because Natashas Law is much simpler to say than the Food Information Amendment England Regulations 2019, which is something I've learnt over the last couple of years to get my tongue round. They emerged from an incident involving a young lady, about 14 from memory, whose name is Natasha Ednan Laperouse, who was seriously allergic to sesame seeds and sesame products. She was going on holiday with her family, on a dream holiday, and to eat on the plane she bought her a baguette from one of the airport outlets. Now, one thing I would ask you to remember is that whenever somebody is buying food in your shop, they are slightly stressed. They're not really in their comfort zone. You may be completely happy with what's going on, but they won't be. They'll be distracted. They'll be thinking about other things. And obviously that is true in spades when you're in an airport outlet. So everybody was in a hurry, everybody was on slightly condensed time, everybody was slightly distracted, they were all thinking about something else. She picked up a baguette, she asked her father, did it look all right? He said yes, everything was fine. They got on the plane, she ate the baguette. There was sesame in the baguette, it wasn't sesame seeds on the surface, it was sesame actually incorporated into the baguette. She very quickly reacted, and very sadly, in a flight under 3 hours, she had died by the time the flight arrived, which is very unfortunate. So now I'm going to talk to you about another young lady, rather older, I have to say. This is Lucy, my late niece, who is in her mid-20s. She's seriously allergic to peanuts. She's quite bright, she's very aware, she's actually a very careful person. She was out for the night and she wanted a wrap, something to eat just to keep her going. She chose falafel and hummus, and she asked specifically, was there any peanuts in the falafel and hummus wrap? And she explained that she was seriously allergic to peanuts and that it would be life-threatening, potentially, should she be given them. Someone decided to swap tahini in the hummus with peanut butter, I think because they'd run out of tahini, which is ironically a sesame paste, and they use peanut butter instead, which is quite similar. A bit of a better outcome, but still 2 injections with an EpiPen, 12 hours after under observation in the emergency room, but she did at least live to tell me the tale. Frankly, when she said, how much should she pursue it? I said, they nearly killed you. What do you think? So the information that you get with your food is very important. It can be, as we've just been saying while you weren't listening, life-saving. So the changes to the law are coming in October, and they relate to food which is pre-packed for direct sale, as it says. So if it's pre-packed for direct sale, it's put into a package. That's what the packed part means. I know it sounds silly, but that is what it means. The package can be a bag or a box or a jar, or even a glass if it's going to be sealed. Importantly, you've done it before you've offered it for sale. So this is something you're doing ahead of time, ready to be put on the shelf, ready to be offered to the consumer. And then we're saying it can't be changed without opening the pack. Those words are directly lifted from the regulations, and that's what it means. What's opening the pack means is open to some interpretation, but it relies on you having closed the pack, and I'll talk about that later. And lastly, it is for direct sale, and that very literally means from the premises on which the package is made. So if you're making it in a shop and you're selling it from the same shop, that's a direct sale. If you're selling it from another shop, that's not a direct sale. So what isn't pre-packed for direct sale? If your food is not packed at all, when the customer comes across it, if it's sold loose, if it's put on a salad bar, if it's sold from a deli counter so that it's open and then you're cutting it and packing it, it's not packed, so it can't be pre-packed. In the case of the deli counter, you may well be putting it in a pack after it's sold, or if you're operating a takeaway, normally takeaways wait until they get an order before they cook and pack up the food. If it's packed after it's sold, then the information must be available at the time it's bought and at the time of delivery if that's at a different place. And we recommend actually a label on each pack to say which allergens that one's got in it. Though we don't absolutely insist on that, it must be available though. So if somebody asks, you must be able to tell them immediately without them needing to spend any money or very much time. If it's in an open bag, it's not pre-packed for direct sale because it's not pre-packed. If you twist the corners of the bag or you shut the lid on the box, it is then packaged. It sounds odd to say, but that is very much what the guidance says from the Food Standards Agency. Under those circumstances, it's packaged. It must have the information on it. Leave the bag open, and the information must be available but doesn't have to be on it. And a cardboard sleeve, which is either open at either end, which can be is frequently used for torpedoes, that sort of thing, baguettes, is not pre-packed either, because you can slide it out, slide it back in again, make your changes to the food, and there it is. It's being changed without opening the pack, and opening the pack is what they say. And it's not pre-packed for direct sale, as I already said, if it's sold from different premises. Now, a stall or vehicle operated by you is permitted, but another shop isn't. All information is then required if it's sold at another premises. An extreme case of that I have honestly come across is where there is a packing station on one side of the road and the food is being sold from another shop on the other side of the road. Technically, that is not a direct sale. So what information do you need? If a pre-packed for direct sale food, you must give labeled on the food the legal name of the food. And I'll have another go at this at the end of it. But there's a lot more information than just a menu description, is what I would say. So I'll gloss over that for now and do a little bit of colouring in later, I think. And a list of ingredients in descending order by weight, and that must be complete. So where you've got compound ingredients, you need to include all the ingredients of that ingredient. And a typical one for that is bread and indeed flour, both of which are much more complicated items than anybody ever thinks. So if you've just put bread, that's definitely wrong. And if you've just put white flour, that's definitely wrong, because there are flour and water in the bread, and there's even other ingredients in the wheat flour apart from just the ground up wheat. Any of the 14 listed allergens, and you can go to the Food Standards Agency website. Most of you will already have this information. But any of those 14 listed allergens must be given emphasis in the list. The sharp-eyed amongst you will see that I've emphasized must by using italics. I've emphasized given by using capital letters, and I've emphasized emphasis using bold. And I'll leave it to you to decide which of those you think works best. But certainly in the typeface that I've used, I don't think italics works very well at all. One thing I would say is that some of the guidance says you can use color. I have two sons, both of whom are fundamentally colorblind. They will see red as black. They will see green and orange, and sometimes red and sometimes yellow as exactly the same color. They will not get any emphasis if you use color for emphasis. I can't stress enough, that is something I really discourage, trying to use colored text for emphasis, because it does not have predictable results. And for distance sales, they're not exactly included in this regulations. They have some exemptions. That means sales over the internet, or sales where you've taken phone orders either from a menu or a flyer, or even from your website by using your website. So you don't have to label the information, but it must be available again at the beginning of the transaction and at the point of delivery. But please remember, this is all about information to the consumer. Do not spend your time looking at the regulations, trying to find a way out of them. If you think you might have to comply, try and comply. If you're still struggling, ask your local authority, they will help. And look on the Food Standards Agency website, there's lots of guidance on there. But it's all about information, and it is to and for the consumer. It's about keeping your customers safe and, albeit rarely, in some cases, alive. To trot out some slightly useful statistics here, about 35% of the population think they're allergic or intolerant to something. So one foodstuff or another. In fact, it's about 1.5%, somewhere between 1.5% and 3% actually are properly allergic to one foodstuff or another, or severely intolerant, such as celiacs. But in a city the size of Bristol, that still means we're talking somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 people. You can't afford to keep 10,000 people away from your shop because you won't give them information. And communication is the key. Now, communication, I'm going to stress here, is a cooperative venture. You need to be cooperating with your customers need to be cooperating with you. The more open you are, the more open they will be, and that will work both ways. And it is in both your interests to work together. And lastly, on this particular remembering, is that consumers may well be allergic to things which aren't on the 14 list. You need to account for this too. Commonly it's strawberries, commonly tomatoes, just not as commonly as some of the things which are on the list. If they tell you that they're allergic to something, you need to keep them safe. And that is all about the safe provision of food. So albeit it's not covered directly by these regulations, it is still covered by the food safety rules that you must supply safe food. And finally, I said I'd come to what a true name of the food is. And this is the definition from the regulations, which is a name providing a description of the food, and if necessary of its use. In where we're talking about its use is unlikely to be that important, you're going to eat it or hopefully avoid it. But the point is, it must be sufficiently clear to enable consumers to know what its true nature is and to distinguish it from other products with which it might be confused. If I was being picky and literal, I would say that a baguette does not normally have sesame in it. If you put sesame in it, you need to put it in the name of the food. And if it had been put in the name of the food originally, Natasha Ednan Laperouse would very probably be alive today and just about to take her GCSEs, or just have taken her GCSEs. So it's much more than just a shorthand description that you might put in a menu. It's not just a falafel wrap. It probably needs to include the salads and garnishes. Perhaps, of course, the unexpected peanuts should have been in there because you wouldn't expect to find them in hummus. And I think I'm going to stop there. So thank you very much for listening if you have been. I need to hand the screen back now to my colleagues. And the next person you hear from, I think, is going to be Gavin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. So carry on, Rachel.
All I was going to say was over to you, Gavin. You beat me to it.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Andy. So my name's Gavin Hill. I'm just trying to share my screen. Hopefully you can see the words emphasis and examples, which gives you a clue as to what I'm talking about. So I'm a trading standards officer in Cornwall. And I'm just going to remind you and emphasise really things that Andy has said, but remind you of the new requirements and probably more importantly, give you some examples. Now, my presentation is very much based on the FSA guidance, and this is to ensure not only consistency across our region, but also nationally in terms of this is new legislation, guidance is new and fresh, just to make sure everyone is understanding it in the same way. So just for consistency from a national perspective, based on the FSA's guidance. So as Andy said, and as you heard, any business that produces pre-packed direct sale food will be required to label it with the name of the food and a full ingredients list with the allergenic ingredients emphasised within that list. So for example, if you supply pre-made sandwiches, things like salad bowls, wrapped cakes, things that the FSA describe as grab and go food, things like that, then from October they'll need to be labelled with, as you can see on the screen, the name of the food, a full list of ingredients, and the allergenic ingredients emphasised either in bold, italics, or capital letters in some way, shape, or form. And you can even pick more than one of those. So you could have it bold and capital letters if you choose to. So what is pre-packed direct sale food? So pre-packed direct sale food, or PPDS, is food which is packed at the same place it's offered or sold to your customers and is in the packaging before it is ordered or selected. And it can include food that your customers select themselves, for example, from a chiller cabinet, from a display unit, and also products that you're keeping behind your counters, and food sold at mobile and temporary outlets as well. So how do you know whether the food that you're selling, bearing in mind that we've got a wide audience, how do you know that your specific food that you're selling is meeting the definition or not? So you need to ask yourself these questions to work out if it falls within this definition of PPDS. Does the customer choose or order the food in person at the premise? Is the food presented to the customer in packaging, and that's fully or partly enclosed, as Andy was saying? Is the food packed before the customer selects or orders it? And is the food packed at the same place it's sold? If you're answering yes to all of those questions, then it meets the definition of pre-packed for direct sale, and therefore triggers the requirement to have the name of the food and the full list of ingredients with the allergens emphasised within those ingredients. To help you even further, the FSA have come up with this very nice looking flow chart, very simple, very easy to follow. Again, it's got those questions in it. Is the food presented to the customer in packaging? Yes or no? Is it packed before the customer selects or orders it? Yes or no? And is it packed at the same place it's sold? Yes or no? And if it's no, then it's either non-pre-packed or pre-packed, and there are different regulatory requirements on those foods. But we're just concentrating, obviously, for the purposes of today, on food which is pre-PDS. And if you answer yes to those questions, then it meets that requirement. To help you further, this flowchart is on the FSA's technical guidance. I think we're going to put a link to it in the chat box any second. And there's also on the FSA website a decision-making tool which talks you through these three questions, and you fill out the box yes or no, and it tells you whether your specific food is either non-pre-packed, pre-packed, or pre-packed for direct sale. There's also, I notice, on the FSA website this week, some additional new guidance which is geared up for trade-specific businesses. So there's guidance on PPDS for butchers, there's one for hospitality, there's one for pubs, and they are sort of brand new, hot off the press. So check out the FSA website if you need further information on whether you need to meet the correct requirements or not. So I was going to talk through some examples. So some further examples of pre-packed for direct sales foods for you. It can include sandwiches and salads packed by the food business and provided from the same premise. It can also apply to fast food that's wrapped or packed before the customer selects them, or supermarket products which are produced and packed in store. It can be food, as I said, that customers can select themselves, as well as pre-wrapped products kept behind the counter, and the food sold at mobile and temporary outlets. So some very specific examples now. So sandwiches and bakery products which are packed on the site before a customer selects them. Fast food packed before it's ordered, such as burgers that are kept under a hot lamp. This is only where the food can't be altered without opening the packaging. Products which are pre-packed on site ready for sale, such as pizzas or rotisserie chicken, salads, and pasta pots. Things you might see in a butcher, so the burgers and sausages which are pre-packed by the butcher on his premise ready for sale. This is an important one because we got questions about this last week, but samples of food which is given away for free, but samples of cookies given to customers for free which are packed on the site. Foods packaged and then sold elsewhere by the same operator at a market stall or mobile site. And it also includes the pre-packed for direct sale food provided in schools, care homes and hospitals and similar settings such as those. So if the foods that you're selling are pre-packed for direct sale foods, how do you know what to put on the label? So hopefully we've cleared that up, but I just want to show you some examples. One example, this is just some pasta sheets that are in the cupboard at home here. So the thing to concentrate on is the ingredients listing. You can quite clearly see that the allergenic ingredients are highlighted, emphasized in some way, so the wheat and the egg. But I've also highlighted the may contain bit of the food label because it's about information to consumers. So if your supplier's labeling has got may contains on their label, you in turn need to pass that information on to your customers when you're creating your own labels. And quite often, quite commonly, we would find on a sort of inspection of a trading standards inspection at a kind of shop, restaurant, retail outlet of some description, the may contain information can be missed off. So just make sure that you're looking out for that when you're looking at the labels of foods that you're getting in from your suppliers, to make sure you include the may contains and pass that information on to your customers. I think that's an important point because it's quite commonly missed off. Okay, Andy mentioned distance selling, but again, just to emphasise and remind you that the new labelling requirements don't apply to pre-packed for direct sale food by distance sales. So that's food ordered online or mail or telephone and then delivered to the customer. And that's because foods sold in this way is already subject to other allergen labelling requirements. So the allergen information must be provided at 2 stages. So before the purchase of the food is completed, and that can be done in different ways, writing on the website, on the menu, or even orally over the phone. And at the moment the food is delivered, again, can be writing on a sticker, copy of the menu, or orally by your delivery driver, if that's the business you're in. But I haven't gone into too much detail about the distance selling because this is outside the remit of the pre-packed for direct sale change which is coming in. But if you wanted more information on how to go about complying with the distance selling requirements of allergy labelling, then you can put something in the chat, or we arrange to talk to your sort of local trading standards department, and again, I'm sure they'll be happy to help. So that was pretty much all I needed to say, and I think we've got lots of time now for questions and answers, which worked quite successfully last week with people having their own individual kind of minds put at rest. So if I stop sharing, I'll hand you back to Rachel.
Thanks, Gavin, and thank you, Andy. Both really interesting presentations. We are starting to get some questions through in the chat. So if you have a question, please feel free to either put it in the chat, or if you just want to turn your microphone on and pose your question to the group, one of our facilitators will give their best attempt to answer. So over to you.
Anybody go? Hi, this is Dawn and Shan from Fresher in Exeter. We're sort of a bit of everything. We do buffets. We do. We've got a cafe. We deliver school meals. Now, how far do you go with the allergens? We've obviously got allergen folders on site. We've got all that lot. But what do we need to do to make sure that we're compliant in October?
Okay, I'll take that one if you like. Hi, I'm Dave from Plymouth. Hi. So, if you, generally speaking, you should already, as you've indicated, have an understanding of your menu items, the ingredients that make up those menu items for all of your products in the cafe, the buffet, etc., etc. And if they are not pre-packed, if they are available loose in the cafe, or then now this is where it gets a little tricky with the FSA. Trade up on a disposable tray, I think was one of the examples used.
Yeah.
You should provide that. That would become a pre-packed item for that buffet. So if you've got a tray of sandwiches, it's covered up, cling filmed over, then there should be something indicating on the with the product what those sandwiches are, what's in them, and the allergens highlighted. That becomes a pre-packed for direct sale, unless
that's
somebody wants to correct me.
Yeah, that's what we understood from what you guys
Yes.
just said. So we just sat there trying to figure out how, you know, obviously, does that then apply to the school food that we will be providing as well from the same site?
If they are packaged, then yes.
If
So
it's
if
in a
they're-
gastro?
If it's in a gastro, so if they're loose items that somebody else is going to be distributing on your behalf, then you are not selling that. That item is not from your establishment. So
Right.
you should be providing your allergens information to the school for them to provide that information onward to their customers, their children, basically.
Perfect.
But if they're individually sent out, then we would have to provide a label.
Because obviously with COVID at the moment and bubbles, we've had to individually package.
Of course, yes. So so there's two bits for packaging and for labelling. There's the new pre-packed for direct sale thing, which we're discussing today. But then there's also the existing requirements that have been in place for some years now for pre-packed foods. So your sandwiches, in effect, still fall into that category of
we have a label system.
Yeah, exactly. So that still remains the case.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you ever so much. I think so. I think it's just got a lot more work between now and October.
Yeah, please don't think we don't have sympathy.
We do.
We really, really do.
I think all of our workload has gone up, but you guys are obviously at the brunt of it.
Yeah,
we're all here to help you though.
Can I just say as well, it's my understanding that there's a primary authority agreement with your company, so there will be an officer getting in touch with you to sort through all of that with you as part of that relationship. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Dave, I've just got one question, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Sure.
Like I said just now, we got a Chinese takeaway with 200 odd items on the menu. When we put like a curry or a beef chow mein in the pot and seal the lid, would we need to put a label on the top?
Yeah.
Because it would be ordered individually by the consumer, and on online sales, they've got an option to select and say they don't want a certain ingredient, as well as on the phone. Or could we use like a default label saying that for allergens, please go to our website and check this allergens webpage?
Okay, I'm happy to take this one as well. So as a takeaway, and certainly with an extensive menu, my sympathy does go out to you, but the requirements are already in place that you should already know for that chow mein, for all your individual dishes, what makes up those dishes. So you should have the ingredients and the allergens that are in those products already. So if you've got that to hand somewhere in the business, that's your requirement met. If you're packaging food up to an order, then you're not pre-packing for direct sale. You're distance selling, and effectively, if that's going out then by delivery to the customer's house, or if somebody's phoned up to then come in and collect. So you've met your requirement by having your, for instance, your allergens matrices, if you use those. If you haven't got a means of easily recalling the contents of a dish, then you might need to do some work still. So I would recommend that everybody here today has a really good look at their menus and just make sure that they've got their information to hand, whether it's for pre-packed for direct sale or otherwise. If you're offering food to the public, you should really know what's in it, so you can inform consumers and let them know if they ask you. So if I order my food from your website and I say, I'll have this chow mein dish, please. I have a nut allergy. If one of those if it's one of several dishes, I would expect to see my order come, not with the labels all over it, but with the one that has no nuts on that packaging, written in, added by a label or some other way of identifying it against the other ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure it does. We've got some duck that gets brought in from China, and it's also manufactured or killed in the same factory that has packaging of peanuts.
Okay, so that's a really good point. If I can just quickly follow up on that one as well. So where your supplier sends you an ingredient, such as the duck in this case, where they have hopefully carried out a full risk assessment and cannot safely say that that product has not got nuts in it, in which case this is a may contain, hopefully a risk assessed may contain. You can't use that as a blanket statement, really. Then if you were indicated on your allergens matrix, I would advise you to include that as an aside on that dish. So your Peking duck will have a little asterisk maybe by it that says may contain peanuts. Doesn't mean that you've added peanuts, that your dish is made up with peanuts, but that duck may possibly have it. That way, if you're asked by a customer who has a serious sensitivity to peanuts or otherwise, you can at least inform them that this dish may contain and not definitely has nuts. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Good questions, those. Thank you. I'll put my mute on there.
Dave, any other questions from the floor? We're getting. Oh, sorry, is that someone's question?
Yeah, I put my hand up, but I'm
Lindsay,
possibly not able to see all of the hands. Hi, my name's Lindsay and I'm from the Plymouth Supreme. We're realising we've got quite a complicated situation on our hands. I can see Dave smiling. On a typical night, we would prepare sandwiches elsewhere, prepare or heat soup elsewhere, and serve it in a cup on a run, actually at the side of the road. We'd prepare a hot meal elsewhere and either portion it up where it's prepared or portion it up on the road, and have commercially packaged goods, which are the least of our problems. So it's sandwiches prepared elsewhere and served on the road, soup prepared or heated elsewhere, dispensed into a cup on the road, and a hot meal prepared elsewhere, possibly portioned up on the road or portioned up in advance. Can you give us some guidance?
If nobody else wants to take that, shall I take that for you, Lindsay? Hi, thanks for that question, Lindsay. I know it's very difficult and it's challenging, I think, to say the least, for volunteers, community food providers all over the country. So if that package, the same thing applies to volunteers and supplying volunteer foods as it does to commercial businesses. As far as we know, there is no difference. There's no derogation, let's say. If you are completely packaging a food item, then you do need to consider the allergen labeling, the labeling as Andy described and Gavin described in their presentations. So it will need the name of the soup, and that should be as descriptive as you can. There should be the ingredients that go into that, and you will also need to put the any bold or capitalized allergens within those ingredients as well on a label. There's no difference whether it's being sold or given for those food items, and that also applies, of course, to ready meals that are contained and sandwiches that are supplied in a pack. Now, if that packaging is open, if it's enclosed completely, then that applies. If it's an open packaging, say the soup is in a tray with the lids off, or it's distributed at point of source, but your allergens information is available to the person receiving the food, then normal allergen requirements would take effect. So effectively, you do still need to have your allergens and understanding of the allergens in those foods, wherever they've been made, to pass on to onward to your consumers, whether they've paid for the food item or not.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. And there's a question in the chat which I think is possibly relating to the same question. So it's from Sam Morecambe, who says, could we just take the can with us? Sam, I don't know whether you want to come on and just explain whether I've got that right. Are you meaning that could you take the kind of original product with you to show people?
Yeah, so as if we're, for example, emptying out the cans of soup or the soup packaging into a big urn, which is then heated through, and then, a big saucepan that's heated through, put into our urn, ready for distribution on the soup run, could we not just swill out the cans and then have that on the table, so that if they say what soup is it, you could say here it is, and you could show them the empty packaging, as it were. And the same applies for other things. If we make up sandwiches and we're using Hovis bread and Tesco basic teas or whatever, can we not just take that packaging and have that on the table?
So I would say yes, that would be, for a single item such as your soup, that would be effective, it would be simple, and the information is easily to hand. And the same would apply to a photograph of that label for the soup, for instance, if that was made available to those on the soup run that night. It gets a little bit more complicated when you're making up sandwiches with a loaf of bread, because, as again Andrew sort of explained, yes, it's the Hovis bread, which will have its wheat in it, which will then, the bread will have its range of ingredients. The wheat will have a subset of ingredients within that ingredient list. But then you've also got things like the cheese, your spreads. The spreads will have ingredients, any spread that's used, any chutney that's used, etc., etc. So it does become a little complicated when you're talking about a made-up multiple product, such as a sandwich. I know it sounds simple, but there's a lot of things go into a sandwich. So that might not be so effective, having the range of labels for cheese, for chutney, for bread on your hand. I would find another solution if I were you in that circumstance. Sorry.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
There's a couple of good questions coming in the chat around people making dairy-free, gluten-free, free-from products. So, for example, Vicky has asked, if I just find that again, I bake biscuits and cakes to order in my home kitchen. Can I offer allergen-free products, for example, dairy-free, gluten-free, even though I can't 100% guarantee they're free from cross-contamination because they're made in a domestic kitchen? And then there's a further sort of question to that says, would the answer to Vicky's question about dairy-free and gluten-free still apply if you ensure that you only use equipment and utensils that have been cleaned and disinfected immediately before use? Andy, you answered Vicky's initial question. Is there anything more you want to add into that? Because that's probably relevant to quite a few people on the call.
I loathe questions about cross-contamination, so I will do my best to answer it, of course. What you need to do is make sure that you minimize the risk. Eliminate it as far as possible. What you're describing will almost certainly eliminate the risk. Were I an environmental health officer, which I'm not, and I don't profess to know too much about food hygiene, although I'm supposed to know quite a lot about hygiene when it comes to animal feed, which is pretty much the same procedures, you would be looking at some sort of certainty that you're not passing on. A dishwasher will almost certainly remove all traces from a hard surface, but then if you've got a wooden surface, it won't be so good. So it's difficult to be absolute about it, but you do need to verify if you possibly can. Disinfection won't remove, for instance, it'll kill a lot of things, but it won't remove traces of flour, it won't remove traces of mustard. Mustard, I think, is the thing that seems to stick to absolutely everything in a kitchen and stay there. It's the one thing that I repeatedly find when I'm sampling to see if things have got traces of cross-contamination in there. Mustard is what comes up, usually I think from mayonnaise, because it gets everywhere and it sticks. So do what you can, we understand. Verify if possible, we advise. And I don't want to say this, but you do need to talk to your insurers, because in the end, they're taking the risk, the financial risk, and you don't want to take the personal risk. Sorry, I know it's an equivocal answer, but it's only because the only answer possible is an equivocal one, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Andy. I understand Lewis has a hand up. Lewis, can we come to you?
Hi. Yeah, going back on a similar vein to the lady that was saying with the soup scenario, the soup kitchen type thing. We run a local community pantry, and we get donated, for an example that springs to mind, boxes of catering Cornish pasties, which we then break down, perhaps two or three in a bag. Now, I appreciate the bit about leaving the bag open, but as far as actually the list of ingredients is concerned, would we be covered in the same way by taking the original label off the box and having that on the counter?
I can cover that one
rather than sort of have to label each bag, which would be a...
If you leave the bag open, I can cover that in a word which is yes, and if you twist the top of the bag, I can cover it in a word which is no. So,
right.
so I think I'm leading you in a particular direction there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks. That's okay. Yeah, that answers it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the floor, or anyone who's put a question in chat and you're not sure that you've got the answer you're looking for, or have any supplementary questions? Mary, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I do buffets and I prepare them on site wherever I do them to, and don't cover the food, but I'm always there during the serving. So do I need to label anything then?
Yeah, I can take that. It's Ross. If you do buffets and you don't cover the food, then they're not pre-packed, but you do need to have information about allergens contained in the food. And if it's a buffet, you really need to have them labelled, showing which plates have certain allergens in there, so that people can avoid them. And you also need to be consider any cross-contamination between different plates of food. So if they're prepared with some allergens in one sandwich, for example sesame, you want to make absolutely sure that other sandwiches have, if people are allergic to sesame, then you need to make sure that they're eliminated as far as possible. And this absolutely goes along with some of the other questions we've been asked about allergens, because it's very difficult to eliminate some allergens. You need to have really good systems and controls to eliminate them completely. And you need a risk assessment before you can think about making a may contain statement. So it's really important that you understand that allergens such as milk and, as Andy said, mustard, those sort of things, and things like wheat can be in the air because it's very difficult to eliminate them. So you need to have that understanding and maybe carried out some sort of test to make sure that you can eliminate them. But for buffets, it's important that you indicate which products have which allergens in, so people know.
Thank you, Roz. Does that answer the question? Thank you, Mary. Okay, we've also got hands up from Vicky Wilcox.
Sorry, have I unmuted myself?
Yeah, we can hear you, Vicky. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the answer to my previous question. I just had one more. I don't think my products count as pre-packaged for direct sale, because I run a home bakery and I bake things to order and sell online and over the phone. But I just wanted to double check. So one of the things that I do make is individually wrapped biscuits, for example, for children's party bags. Does each item, sometimes they're quite small and in little bags, but does each item need its own ingredients label, or is it sufficient for me to just provide an ingredients leaflet with the whole order, if that makes sense, and also obviously provide that information at point of sale as well?
I can take that one if you like. Yes, you could provide some additional information separate to that particular item that indicates what's in the bag effectively, a little leaflet, or have the information online. And in reference to the buffets from Dominique's question just now as well, and your party bags perhaps, it might be apt. But if you've beforehand understood the dietary requirements of the people receiving, that can sometimes go some way to ensuring that you've got a heads up that there is somebody at the party that can't have nuts or can't have dairy, so you can make special arrangements for those separate food items ahead of the game.
So as long as that's been communicated, each individually wrapped biscuit does not need its own label.
So there is a minimum size of label which is out there, which, unless Andy wants to correct me, I think it's 10 centimeters squared, surface area of the food, and that's quite small. It's if you imagine 2 centimeters by 5 centimeters, or any combination of numbers that creates 10.
Yeah.
If that's the surface area. If the surface area of the food is less than that, then you are exempt from having to provide a label. If it's bigger than that, you should attempt to provide a label. I think that's correct. Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, I think you're right there. The way I put it is, look at your thumb. That's my thumb. That bit there is about 3 centimeters. If you make that into a square, that's 10 centimeters squared. And what I'm going to say is, it's not very big. Bigger than that, if it is for direct sale, you need to be providing a label. Although up to a surface of 8 by 10 centimeters, you can use smaller lettering. But with the amount of information that is being asked for in this case, you can probably get away with your what I think I've said was 9 point, which works out with most fonts. I wouldn't want to tell you that I've sat down and measured quite a lot of fonts on A4, but that's the sort of sad person I turn into sometimes.
Thanks, Andy. Does that answer your question, Vicky?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great. We've got time for a couple more questions, so I'll just take the couple of hands that are up. So we've got Dominique and we've got Viv. So Viv, I think you were first, so if I come to you next.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. I think it was Dave that said about, if he's going to sell pre-packed sandwiches, say we're a cafe and we're going to make up some sandwiches and package them for sale, that we can't just put on the ingredients label that it contains butter or margarine. We then have to break down every component in that as well. Is that correct?
I'm going for the easy answer there, which is yes, again, I'm afraid.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, just to make doubly sure.
And I'm well aware that some of the ingredients you use have lists of ingredients themselves, which, as long as you're on. If I want to use an example to other regulators when I'm training of a product which looks really easy and is in fact really complicated, I always use a sandwich. Usually a tuna mayo sandwich on white bread, because you run into almost the Gettysburg Address, which is 478 words, just
Wow.
on the one label. And it, I'm going to say it again. Please don't think we're unsympathetic. We do our best to help you to comply when we know it's difficult. So we are sympathetic. We just try to get you to comply, get you to do what the law says you need to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Viv. Good question. Okay, the last question then come to Dominique.
Hiya, sorry, we are completely bamboozled to a certain extent. So the other thing we do from our sites is jiffy vans. Now, obviously, all our prepackaged food is labelled. We have a very good label system that we've got here. But the one thing that isn't would be the pasties that we sell. Does this then mean that we need to produce a label for the girls selling that? Because obviously it goes out hot, it goes into an oven, and then they have to package it before giving it to the consumer. How would we work that one?
I'm guessing they take it out of the oven to give to the consumer and put it in a package. It's not
in a bag. It's not pre-packed.
It's not pre-packed, so a description with all the information is available is what you need to do.
So as long as we've got that on the van, then that's absolutely fine. Yeah, they're covered. They're able to offer it to them.
But
that's okay then. That's fine.
The important thing is that it's put in after the customer asks for it.
Yeah, right. So that's packaged.
It's all about timing.
Right.
It's just getting very confusing when you've got multiple things going on one site. It's not just quite so straightforward as, yes, we do sandwiches. That's fine. We've got the labelling for that. That's not an issue. But when you're doing the cafe stuff as well, when you're doing the other stuff, it's just making sure that you're covered, isn't it? So yeah, it's confusing. So yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Well, thank you, everybody. We've reached 4 o'clock, and I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much indeed to all the presenters today, and to Roz, to Dave, to Jason, to Olivia for supporting in the background with the chat. If we will now, when we close the meeting, we'll finish the recording and we'll send you all a link to the recording so you can always watch back again or share with others if you wish. There will also be a copy of the presentations that you've seen today. And as I said at the beginning, we will bring together a collection of the questions and the answers that we've had over both of the webinars to share with you so that you've got some FAQs to go to. If you're still unsure and if you want some more support, then please do contact your local trading standards service or your local environmental health service at the council, and they will be more than happy to signpost you and support you with some further advice. I think that's all we've got time for. So once again, just to thank everybody very much indeed for participating today. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to the Chambers for hosting. I wish you all a very pleasant evening.